Previously on Thor.
During the events of a tie-in story to the Avengers Disassembled event, Marvel ended their Thor series with the God of Thunder severing Asgard from the Yggdrasil, the Tree of Life. This in turn would break the cycle of Ragnarok, and the Norse pantheon would go MIA in the Marvel Universe for about 2 years. Thor's return came about in the pages of Fantastic Four when the hammer Mjolnir, along with several other Asgardian artifacts, was discovered outside of the city of Buxton, Oklahoma. After several individuals, including the Thing and Doctor Doom, attempted to lift the enchanted hammer up, it eventually wound up in the possession of Donald Blake, Thor's old human presence here on Earth. Thor would then make a sudden appearance during the Civil War event, only for it to be revealed to be a cloned robot created by Tony Stark that the fans would eventually dub as Clor.
Just go with it.
To bring the real Thor back to the Marvel Universe, Marvel enlists the writing talents of J. Michael Straczynski, best known for the Hugo Award-winning television series Babylon 5. Straczynski had Donald Blake acting as an anchor to bring Thor back without the baggage of Ragnarok. Thor would then go about finding other Asgardians whose souls had been grafted onto human beings. One Asgardian in particular that Thor desperately searched for was his longtime love, Lady Sif. He couldn't locate Sif, but did find Loki in the form of a woman. Thor would then take a brief detour to beat up Iron Man for the whole Clor fiasco before elevating into Earth's atmosphere to perform a mass revealing of Asgardians. The strain of the act would deplete Thor to the point that he began plummeting to Earth. Also, I idiotically left a blooper in the final cut of my episode.
So, as long-lost Asgardians begin to reawaken and ingratiate themselves to the citizens of Buxton, Oklahoma, let's continue the story with Thor, Volume 2.
Several other Asgardians find Thor and bring him back to the new Asgard. The only way to restore his depleted energy is his father's old recharging cycle known as the Odin Sleep. Knowing that this was a possibility, Thor commissioned the construction of a special container to protect him during the ritual. He temporarily passes leadership to his half-brother Balder before entering the chamber. By entering Odin Sleep, Thor now dwells in a state between life and death, which allows for Donald Blake to return and walk the earth. He takes it upon himself to take off to New York City, as there's someone he's needed to reconnect with for some time now. As this is happening, Thor now finds himself in Hel, the Norse land of the dead. Waiting there for him is none other than Odin.
I should point out that Odin was killed before the events of the Ragnarok storyline, so he can't technically be rescued from the land of the dead the way everyone else was. Which is weird because at the end of the last volume, before Thor performed the giant ritual, he expressed some doubts as he was afraid Odin would be reawakened and try to set things back to the way they were, not approving of his son's newfound ways. So, yeah, it just didn't really seem to make any sense there, did it?
Thor witnesses Odin take on his longtime nemesis Surtur, ruler of the fire giants. The two wind up killing each other, though they soon revive. Again, they're in the land of the dead. Odin and Surtur now battle to the death on a daily basis. Odin points out that this ritual should really be called the Thor Sleep, as it's his turn to be ruling, and he then begins telling the Thunder God a story. Odin was born the son of Bor, who raised him to fight the wars the Aesir were constantly fighting. After a while, Odin began meddling in the affairs of the mortals on Midgard, which greatly displeased Bor. Still, when another battle needed to be fought, Odin was at his father's side. Unfortunately, it would be Bor's last battle, as a powerful sorcerer turned him into snow. Odin had the ability to recall Bor, much like how Thor did with him, but knew he had to move on for the greater good. Meanwhile, Donald Blake touches down in New York City, where he soon goes to a hospital oncology ward to be reunited with Dr. Jane Foster.
Jane Foster was a nurse and later doctor who worked alongside Donald Blake. The two fell in love, but she also fell in love with Thor, failing to realize that they were both the same person. Eventually, Donald revealed the secret, and the two would wind up growing apart, with Thor eventually resuming his romance with Lady Sif. Now, Jane would go on to briefly... No, we're not anywhere near that point yet. Jane would briefly run a clinic designed to help superheroes recover from their battles. However, she lost that after she took the wrong side during the Civil War event.
Donald and Jane have lunch in the cafeteria as she explains that she recently got divorced and gave up custody of her son. Why exactly? Because she found out Donald Blake was back and expected a resumption of their relationship. However, that's not the reason Donald's there. He's still trying to find Sif, and at one point, Sif and Jane were connected, like he and Thor. Jane denies knowing anything about Sif and storms off. Donald tries searching for Jane when a terminal patient named Mrs. Chambers begins calling to him. This is enough to bring Jane, who calls for a nurse. Donald apologizes for misleading Jane, and the two agree to meet for drinks every so often and try to be friends. As this is happening, the nurse reveals the truth. She's really Loki, and Mrs. Chambers is actually the reborn Lady Sif. Back in Hell, Odin continues his story as the sun begins to rise on a new day. Once Bor contacted Odin with a prophecy that he would one day kill a frost giant and adopt the frost giant's son, who would go on to become the trickster god Loki. When the day came, Odin followed through on the prophecy, not exactly knowing why. As Surtur begins to arrive, Thor decides that today Odin will not die in battle and joins his father to take down the fire giant. As Thor awakens, Loki approaches Baldur with an offer of friendship. He wants nothing to do with her, but she points out that Ragnarok is broken. She no longer identifies as a trickster deity and wishes for friendship. This is all witnessed by the Warriors 3, Volstagg, Fandral, and Hogun, who reiterate their distrust. All of this gets interrupted when William, a resident of Buxton, comes for a date with a lesser Asgardian named Kelda. Loki continues to persist with Baldur, even tipping him off to the location of a frost giant's stronghold in the Rocky Mountains. She also points out that she knows the truth about Baldur's lineage.
Okay, this is where the Marvel Comics differentiate from the original Norse myth. In the original Norse Aesir, Thor and his brethren, save for Loki, are the offspring of Odin and the goddess Frigga. In the Marvel Comics, only Baldur is the offspring of Odin and Frigga. Loki is an adopted frost giant, and Thor and the rest of them are the offspring of Odin and Gaia, the earth spirit. Also in the original Norse myth, Thor is redhead, not blonde.
Baldur goes out to deal with the frost giants. Shock of shock, they were actually under Loki's employ the whole time, and the battle spills onto a public road, causing a traffic pileup. Baldur and Loki are subsequently arrested, forcing Thor to bail them out. Upon returning to Asgard, Baldur confronts Thor about the information Loki told him. Thor admits the truth, that Odin hid the knowledge of Bor's lineage because it was foretold that Bor's death would begin Ragnarok. However, the cycle of Ragnarok is now broken, and Thor is more than happy to share power with his half-brother. Bor is crowned co-ruler of Asgard as a child looks on through a viewfinder to see Loki smiling back evilly. Things slowly return to normal as Donald returns to New York City to meet up with Jane and allow Thor to say goodbye to Captain America on the first anniversary of his death. The Thunder God then makes everyone observe a minute of silence by disrupting satellite communications. Meanwhile, Loki is in Vegas paying a visit to his daughter Hela, Queen of the Dead. The trickster god is in need of her power, and he wants to visit a certain point in time after a quick gender change.
Hela, much like her father, has often tried to overthrow Asgard, with the two working together on many occasions. However, it winds up falling apart as they're constantly trying to further their own agendas. At this point, Loki is secretly hiding Hela in Las Vegas so that she can act as a call girl and feast upon innocent souls who wander into her domain. Now, I should also point out that with Loki here, I'm going to be doing some gender pronoun switching, so if there's any transgendered or gender fluid individuals watching this, I'm not trying to demean you or be mean-spirited. It's just kind of how the story's told, unfortunately.
Hela recognizes that Loki's feminine disguise is really that of Lady Sif, and she'll make sure to keep an eye on it. Loki enters a portal where he arrives at the final battle of Bor. Loki dons the guise of the sorcerer and delivers the blow that effectively kills his adopted grandfather. Hearing Bor's message to look in the snow in order to revive him, Loki then takes the form of the elder god in order to deliver the prophecy of his own adoption by Odin. Returning to Earth, Loki dons his female form once more, with a warning from Hela that Thor will kill him once he finds out. It won't matter though, after Loki goes looking in the snow, Thor won't be a problem anymore.
It's at this point we've reached the milestone 600th issue of Thor. Marvel would return series to the original numbering whenever they would hit this type of thing sometimes. Anyway, this issue features the return of Odin's father Bor, a character who had appeared mainly in flashback throughout Thor comics to this point. Also, this issue features an appearance by the Dark Avengers, which places it after the events of Secret Invasion. Again, if you remember my Invincible Iron Man review, Marvel had some really bad shipping issues going on at this time, and this series was not an exception. Anyway, the Dark Avengers were Norman Osborn, who had been awarded the title of Director of S.H.I.E.L.D., which he dismantled and formed a new organization, Hammer, and he rechristened himself the Iron Patriot and introduced his own team of Avengers, which were dark takes on characters like Wolverine, Hawkeye, and Spider-Man.
Loki tracks Bor's essence to New York City, where the Elder God is soon resurrected and placed under an enchantment that makes him believe he's trapped in a demon dimension. Donald Blake soon receives a call from Jane Foster about an Asgardian wreaking havoc. Thor quickly makes his way to New York City and tries to reason with Bor, unaware of his identity. Bor believes Thor to be a demon who has killed Odin and begins attacking him. Thor tries to place a call to the Avengers. Unfortunately, it's not the Avengers he'd want, as the Dark Avengers arrive on the scene and are soon tossed aside like paper rag dolls. Meanwhile, Loki makes it back to Asgard, where she informs Baldur that Thor is fighting their grandfather. Knowing the ramifications of what could possibly happen, the two race off to halt the battle. Back with Thor, he begins to find his inner resolve and fight back against Bor. Still unaware of his opponent's identity, Thor begins beating Bor mercilessly with Mjolnir. Baldur and Loki arrive, but it's too late as Thor lands a killing blow. Baldur points out what Thor has done as Bor dies. Baldur points out that because Bor was resurrected, that technically made him king of Asgard, and now that Thor just killed him, he is now considered to be a usurper. There is only one punishment for this: permanent exile from Asgard. Thor prepares to leave with a message. He knows something is up and that Bor's sudden appearance had something or someone behind it, and soon he'll be back. After Thor leaves, Loki approaches Baldur. Oklahoma really doesn't suit the Asgardian lifestyle. It's too flat and warm, not like the snowy, serene mountains of home. However, she's found a new place that's more than willing to take them, and it's a lot more like home. She's spoken personally with Dr. Doom, and the doors of Latveria are open to all Asgardians who want to come.
And that concludes our look at Volume 2 of Thor. How was it? Well, I think this is a very well-constructed and nuanced story with some intriguing plot points throughout all of it, and some really good characterization, which, well, there's one exception that I'll get to. However, this is all coupled with some spectacular artwork from Olivier Coipel. Now, I did mention that one minor characterization flub, and it's definitely got to be Jane Foster. I mean, this is a character who was married and had a kid, and then basically gave all that up because she thought Donald Blake would want to resume the relationship. Like, what? Like, huh? Like, she was doing fine for herself, and it just doesn't make any sense. It just, yeah, it seems really kind of shallow. It doesn't really come across very well at all. Also, there's that little Odin discontinuity bit I mentioned before where, earlier Thor said he didn't want to reawaken Odin, and then it turns out, oh, he couldn't have reawakened Odin. Again, I'm not entirely sure why. It just feels like kind of a bit of a flub. And on top of that, the pacing with issue 600, I mean, that's a double-sized issue, but it feels really rushed. Now, granted, it's a lot of silent action sequences, so maybe there's a little bit of a problem in there, and that it makes it a little easier to cover and zip through sometimes. But yeah, for a double-sized issue, the pacing feels off. And I wonder if that's because J. Michael Straczynski announced he was going to be leaving the book with the third volume, and we'll get into the reasons behind that when we cover that story. Anyway, this is good too, but to be honest, I would really recommend reading the first volume first and then moving on to this one before, and not just jumping into it. So I'm going to be giving Thor Volume 2 a B. Again, if you're a new reader, I would suggest you start at Volume 1 and then go to Volume 2, obviously, not just start at Volume 2. It doesn't really make much sense. Anyway, let's see what we'll be doing next time on the Random Trade Review.
Remember, you can help support my channel at patreon.com/sleepytimeforcatproductions. There, you can request a trade to be put in the randomizer, aka the cardboard box. Also, remember, like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring that notification bell.